Hello.
That was very prompt. It was very prompt.
I'm nothing if not prompt.
I know, I know. Well, this is the Nitty and the Gritty. I think this is episode 5. And
Right on.
I've got Trapper Haskins on the phone. Trapper Haskins is a husband, a father, a songwriter, a woodworker, an author, a runner of marathons, a diabetic, and most importantly, a mountain man's Whitney Houston. So I would like to ask you first and foremost, why did you make time to do this?
Well, you are the author of the phrase "Mountain Man's Whitney Houston." So
You felt like it was
I
payback to
I feel indebted to you. Yeah,
fair
yeah,
enough. Fair enough.
yeah.
Well, yeah, man. I'm really glad that you agreed to do this. It'll be interesting to talk to you about the multitude of things that you do. I guess the first thing I would want to ask you is how do you balance all the things that you do? No joke, or all jokes aside,
Yeah.
and be because I know you're a good husband and I know you're a good father. So how do you try to balance? Because you're somebody that, at least from the outside looking in, seems to live a pretty full life. And I have a cat and a podcast and a failing music career, and I have trouble balancing that with my fucking job sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you this. So we have 2 cats, and I also have a failing music career. So we have a lot in common
we
from the jump.
this
So
is a good message for America. We have more in common than we don't. You know, that's
for sure.
yeah. But seriously, like, how do
Man, I get terribly overwhelmed at times, and my wife warns me constantly that I'm sort of, if there's a new project, I've sort of learned to kind of maybe not take on every cool thing that kind of comes across the screen. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I've always sort of been a not ADD kind of person, but pretty wide ranging curiosity. So I kind of, I've gotten into boat building before, gotten into guitar building, been a songwriter for years and all these other things. And I have a hard time saying no to all these other things that I like and just focusing on the one thing. So as far as balancing them, I don't know that I don't really do them all at one time. I'll kind of really focus on the writing for a little while, and then I got to take a few days off, and then I might. So I guess I sort of
kind of sound like a normalized schizophrenic person. Like,
okay.
I mean, I mean that as a joke, but like it sounds like you'll focus on one thing for a while and make that your top priority, obviously outside of your family, and
Yeah.
and then once that kind of gets old, you move on to something else.
Yeah, I guess I kind of feel like if you can imagine, like when you were a kid and you had that lunch tray that had all those different indentations on it, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'll focus on my green beans for a minute, and then I'll go over to the mashed potatoes, and then I'll go to the meatloaf, and then back to the green beans, and then a slug of milk to wash it down. But
Sounds like we're at a Cracker Barrel.
yeah, oh, delicious, delicious.
It's a good restaurant.
But to stay on that sort of metaphor, if you kind of mix a forkful of all that stuff, you can't. It's kind of hard to differentiate one from the other. And so I guess what I mean by that is, like, if I'm training for a marathon,
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a whole lot of running. So I have learned to back off on my writing hours. Or if I've got a chapter that's due, I might back off on my guitar practicing or some of the woodworking
Yeah.
projects I'll take on. And in the past, I didn't really do that. And I would get just devastated because I was so overwhelmed, and I would let a bunch of, I had all these plates spinning, and I'd let them drop on the ground, and it was kind of frustrating. But Mandy's a pretty good corner person to be like, you need to do this for a little while,
Yeah.
and then focus on that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I've never been any other way. I can obsess over one thing for a while, but then I gotta do something else.
I mean, even with this podcast, like I started it, I don't know, late last year or the fall of last year.
Okay.
And I only did I think I did 4 episodes. There's been a couple times where I've recorded some stuff where Daddy had a few too many drinky poos and we couldn't put those out because they got a little too wild. But like I got to the point where I was really like when I first started doing this, I was really enjoying it.
Uh-huh.
And then after doing 4 episodes, like, we were talking on the phone to get the levels right and everything. And I was telling you that there's a lot more work that goes into this than one would think, or even I thought when I got into
Right.
it, particularly with post-production, making the audio sound good, and then also putting it into video form to put it on YouTube. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, I got to the point where I was really burnt out on this. And I wasn't so burnt out on it necessarily, but working as many hours as I work right now, which is usually over 40, I was having to do this on the weekend, and then I'm kind of struggling to get it done. But the thing was, I wasn't playing music. I wasn't writing songs. So I
Right.
finally said, like, I'm going to take a break from this for a minute and then try to work on music. And frankly, I think I've written one half-assed song since, like, I don't know, the last song I put out. But I kind of see what you're saying about having to shift your focus, and when you get to the point where you feel overwhelmed, just kind of back off from whatever and move on to.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess it's
just
like
that it's that
shuffling your priorities almost.
exactly. Because if you were trying to stay up at night and work on your podcast, and then wake up first thing in the morning, then go to work, and then come home from work and try and write some songs, you end up like it's that whole thing about multitasking. You're just not really effective at any of the things you're doing. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a bunch of different interests and stuff, but like trying to do them all at one time is just you can't excel at any of them if you're just
Yeah.
doing them all at the same
I've
time.
noticed there was early on. I tried to do 2 podcasts back to back in a night.
Creating them,
No,
you were
no,
creating.
recording them in a night. So I
Okay.
scheduled one for like 6, and I scheduled the other one for 8. And
Okay.
the 8 o'clock one was one of the ones where I had a few too many drinky poos and got a little wild, and we had to back it off. But the thing was, I was almost there was carryover from the first conversation that I was injecting into the second conversation because I had spoken with someone about one topic right before that. So, of course, that was on my mind. And I kind of started injecting a topic into the second conversation that really didn't need to be in it
Oh,
because I was in that headspace for like 2 hours. And when you're talking about different creative endeavors, I mean, maybe this is another allegory or metaphor or whatever to look at it. Just with those podcasts, you get bleed over,
yeah.
and it's like you're kind of, and then there's the old saying, like, I don't know exactly how it goes. You might know better than me, but it's, if you do a bunch of things, what is it? It's like something, if you do a bunch of things I can't remember, but like if you
Oh,
do,
yeah.
what, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Something about doing a bunch of things. Do one thing whole ass instead of a bunch of things half ass
Yes,
kind of thing.
exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that kind of ends up, with me anyway, that's a big thing.
Yeah, but I mean, the other thing with your podcast, though, like trying to do two of them back to back. I mean, even if you could pull it off, you're gonna be mentally fatigued
oh
by
yeah.
the middle of that second interview, I would think. But one of my favorite quotes, I can't remember the writer who said it, but it's something to the effect of, if you have more than three priorities, you don't have any.
Oh man, my grandma used to say that if you can count your friends on one hand, you're a very lucky person, or more than one hand, you're a very lucky person. And I never understood that when I was younger. I was always like, Grandma, you crazy. I got tons of friends because I'm in high school. And as I've gotten older, I recognize that there's such a big difference between friends and acquaintances,
Totally. Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, and you and I mean, I consider you to be a friend because we have like, we can talk to each other and pick up right where we left off like
Oh, yeah.
years later. I mean, we don't, it's not
Yeah.
like you and I are texting each other each night to tell each other good night, baby. So it's like I talk
I mean, I would appreciate that now and again, Chris, honestly.
I'm a selfish lover. I apologize, but I think like I consider you to be a friend, but truly, like there are. As I've gotten older, and I've always been this way, I've always distinguished between friend and acquaintance, and maybe that's a good way of looking at priorities, is to distinguish between what needs to be your friend right now and what you can kind of put on the back burner. I suppose.
Yeah. Just hobbies that you can walk away from for a while. Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking to you. That's the podcast.
Okay.
No,
Wow. That's short and sweet.
Yeah, we're doing the shorts YouTube thing. So tell me about your book, because I wanted to talk to you about that because I think that's fascinating. I mean, you do that's the thing, dude. I could do like 5 podcasts with you and just we could talk about one. And maybe we're gonna fuck this up because we're doing a bunch of things half-assed instead of one thing whole-assed. But
oh man, way to bring it back bring it back in focus.
I believe in comedy that's called a callback. But yeah, man. I mean, with the book thing, tell the people about that, because to me that's a really fascinating story, and the fact that you're doing it is cool. And
man,
then afterwards, I want to talk to you about the guy in the title of the book, because I have a favorite quote of his, and I'm sure you probably know a few. And anyway.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Cool. So, my wife and I, 20 years ago, we built an 18-foot wooden rowboat, and the intention was to row it the whole way down the Mississippi River. The headwaters are in North Minnesota, and of course it empties out in the Mississippi River, empties out in the Gulf of Mexico. And we made it in 2002. We were in our 20s, and we made it within 93 miles of the Gulf, and we stopped in New Orleans for, I don't know, a variety of reasons, some of which I kind of wrestled with for years. We just didn't finish it. It seemed like a good place to stop in New Orleans. And then when I turned 40 a few years ago, I mean, I really had kind of a nervous breakdown, and I don't know, midlife crisis, or just trying to deal with, I was not where I expected to be in life. And I don't mean financially, I mean creatively. I had sort of stopped doing.
I wonder what that's like. I'm joking, because I'm there. Maybe I need to build a fucking rowboat and go down
there.
You
go. And it was just kind of a devastating time for me, because I had, put away the guitars, and I was working in an office environment, which I learned is not for me. And so by this point we had 2 kids, and at the time they would have been either 10 and 11, I think, a couple of years ago. And so we still had that wooden rowboat sitting in the backyard, and the bottom had rotted out.
Oh man.
So
speaking of metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. And so my daughter and I rebuilt a little bit of help from my son, but he was a little impatient with the sandpaper. So my daughter and I rebuilt the boat, put a new bottom on it, and in late 2018 put it back in the Mississippi River in New Orleans and finished the last 93 miles. And the kids were with us for about half of those miles. And so I'm writing a book that's sort of it's a travelogue about our trip down the Mississippi, but it's also a memoir about, walking away from your creative pursuits and then coming back to them at midlife, which is what I feel like I've been doing. And so this is, I mean, I've always been a writer, and I've written essays and stuff like that, and writing songs like you since I was a kid. But this is the first time I've really sat down and tried to put a manuscript together. And I knew that it would be difficult. I will confess, I did not know it was going to take me as long as it has taken me, because a 300-page book is, I'm not going to say it's more difficult, but it's damn sure more time consuming than writing a 3-minute song.
Yeah.
So last year I finished the first draft.
Doesn't have to rhyme.
That's true. It doesn't have to rhyme. And it doesn't have to, I fortunately don't have to sing this thing.
Yeah.
I may end up reading the audio book, but we'll see.
You have a lovely voice.
So where it's at right now, last year I finished the first draft, and so I'm going. Right now it's 12 chapters, and I'm going back through it, sort of doing a self-edit. And so now I just finished chapter 9. So I'm 3/4 of the way done with the second draft. And then I'm going to hand it off to a professional editor to do all the copy editing, and then maybe find any holes in the narrative, and then hopefully get this thing published and out there, because I've been working on it for a few years, and the wooden boat is still sitting in our backyard now.
I mean, that's so cool just the origin story of you seeing the boat after you kind of had that midlife crisis, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like, I really like that. And then the fact that you and your daughter and your kids and everything got to rebuild it and then go finish the trip is, I mean, to me, that's testament to how cool you are. Just that in and of itself.
It was special for sure.
Yeah, that's badass. Now, did you mention the title at all?
So I don't know. I'm sort of wrestling with this. The working title of the book is Chasing Twain.
That's the one I wanted to talk about.
And the reason that we've sort of used that as a working title is because the boat that we built is actually a Mississippi River yawl, which is a historical boat. They used them. The steamboats on the rivers used to use them back in the day for lifeboats. The fishermen on the river would use them. In fact, in several of Twain's books, he mentions rowing to shore in a yawl boat. And so the the design that we built it to was from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, 1889. So it's a design that dates back to the 19th century, and it's the kind of boat that if Twain was rowing on the river, that's the kind of boat he would have been in. So it's sort of like,
that's amazing.
Feels like a conduit to that time. So
I was thinking about this because I never make notes before I start these because I'm lazy. But tonight or today I was like, I'm going to write down a few things I want to talk about with you. And I wrote down these things. And as I looked at the list, I was like, am I interviewing Trapper or a 98-year-old man? Because it's just like, I don't know, like you do the old time baseball thing. And then I wrote, I don't know, just some of the things on this piece of paper in front of me. It definitely looks like I'm interviewing an octogenarian instead of you.
Well, it's funny because my wife and I have been married since we were in our 20s. And we're both in our 40s now. And she used to say back then, she would just shake her head and be like, you just can't wait to be an old man, can you? And I was like,
Shit, my nickname was Grandpa whenever
That's
I was
right.
19.
That's right.
That was for different reasons. It's because my dorm smelled like cigarettes and whiskey. And my friend said that it smelled like his grandpa's den. He started calling me Grandpa.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I knew the nickname Grandpa Black. Yeah. I did not know the origin of that. That's terrific.
That's what it was because I just
that's perfect.
Smoked like a chimney in my dorm, and apparently that day we had a bit of a bender the night before. But yeah, with the Twain thing, I was gonna I'm sure you have more knowledge of Mark Twain than I do, but I mean, when I was a kid, I read Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, all that jazz, and was like, really, really into it. My mom had bought me, which I don't know where they are. I wish I knew. There was this really cool collection of classic books where they were all, the binding on them was all the same, and it just looked, there was like great art on the hardback. And I really wish that I could figure out where those are because I don't know. But like all the classics, like Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, Treasure Island, like all that old school stuff.
Yeah, and they had like the gold filigree or something on the spine.
Yes, and then there was like watercolor, if I remember correctly. I don't know, but like just these really cool snapshots of whatever the book was supposed to look, like the movie poster for the book basically was on the cover of it. But they were really cool. But I got into Twain when I was a kid, and like as I've gotten older, I'm living in Paducah, the river culture and all that stuff. It's kind of interesting. And I've never been one to I haven't built any boats, you know what I mean, or anything like that. But I've always been I've been within earshot of people that are really into those. There's a band in Paducah called the Wheelhouse Rousters.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Josh Coffey and Nathan Lynn and all them, and they went back and found songs that the people working on the boats sang, and then they found the music. There was this woman, I can't think of her name, but she got on the boats back in the late 1800s, and there were these people that worked on the boats that I think were primarily black, and they had these like work songs that they would sing. And she was, she knew how to write music. So she got on the boat and then notated all the songs that they sang. And then those guys' project was they got it might have been Mary Wheeler was the lady's name.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. But like she basically had all this music notated, and then they found it and brought it back to life and made a record out of it.
Yeah, so she was one of those like song catchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but instead of going to Appalachia, she was getting on the riverboats.
Yeah, exactly. And so they put out this album, and then I think they've kind of gotten away from that. I think they're just doing their own stuff now. But I've just known people that are into the river culture, and a couple years ago, I got Mark Twain's Autobiography because I always wanted to read it.
I just read that last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't read it because I'm a lazy piece of shit. I read like a little bit of it. That's any book that I get. I'm like, I'm going to read this. And then I read, sometimes I'll get through a book, but I'll end up writing songs or whatever. If I'm in my spare time, I choose to use it for more than reading or trying to produce music or whatever, which is sad. I wish I read.
Man, this is my wife and I. We had the same conversation because probably a year or two ago, it was last year. We both had like this pile of, to be read, books we were going to read, and it was like we had this conversation where it was just like, man, every time I think I'm going to read this, and I'm just like, I'll read that when I'm in the mood to read. But you're always like in the mood to scroll your phone or pick on the guitar or something like that. And so I started doing this. I don't know, self-directed challenge or whatever. I was like, well, instead of in the morning when I'm having a cup of coffee, instead of scrolling on the phone or playing Sudoku or something like that, I'm going to read while I'm drinking my coffee first thing in the morning. And I, just doing the math, if you read 10 pages, you're going to read a 300-page book every month.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And now it's gotten to the point where like I wake up in the morning and I don't have to remember to do that. Yeah. So I've been doing that for a year now, and it's just habit. Like I put the coffee on, pick up a book, and just make sure that I read 10, 15 pages while I'm drinking my first cup of coffee. And then, but anyhow, that's how I got through Twain's book, because it's like 490 pages. So it's a tome.
It's a Girth Brooks.
Yeah.
It's a big boy, but I really like that dude. And I don't know. I feel like, and I've watched documentaries on him, and I feel like in a way he was like the first stand-up comedian of all time. I've heard people say that because he went on those tours, and he was just a really interesting guy. And one of my favorite quotes that is, at least I've heard, is attributed to him. I don't even know if he said it, but we don't have a fact checker on this podcast, so who cares? But he said that when and this is something that, living in Paducah, this hit me hard when I heard this one. Okay. And it was, when the end of the world comes, I want to be in Kentucky because everything happens there 20 years later.
He did say that, okay. But he said it about Cincinnati.
Son of a bitch, Trapper! Like, you didn't have to say that. He said it about Cincinnati.
Yes. I'll be the Mark Twain fact checker on this podcast.
You just ruined my life. Like, I was so excited, and like I thought it was so apropos. And I mean, you could say that about the Midwest in general.
You could,
because
absolutely.
At the end of the day, culture starts in the coasts, and then it just slowly creeps its way into the Midwest. And then by the time the Midwest catches on to whatever California and New York are doing, something new.
Yeah, and I don't know where he was when he said that. I presume that it was later in life, which would have meant he was living in Hartford, Connecticut. So, like you said, something on the East Coast. And so if he said it about Cincinnati, it probably would apply in his mind to the entire Ohio River Valley, which would include Kentucky. So you can by extension have Kentucky.
I mean, that really breaks my heart. But I learned something, and now I can at least say Cincinnati instead of, which is kind of funny because you were hitting me up about wanting to go to Cincinnati to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird? Trying to book.
That's so weird. Yeah. Trapper hit me up when we were talking about doing this today, and he's trying to go play a show in Cincinnati and asked me if I had anybody I knew over there. And I threw him a Hail Mary, that's for sure, but hopefully it'll pan out. But that's interesting. So what are some of your favorite Twain quotes?
I mean, that's one of them. That one's right up there, just because because that quote, the first time I heard it, it reminded me of, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I remember somebody visiting us from California, and this was like, there was a period in the 80s, maybe, I don't know if you remember this, when like doctors' scrubs, those V-neck shirts were sort of in style.
Don't remember that, bud.
So somebody from California brought those, some family member brought them. And I remember my sister and I being like, what? Why would I wear this? What is this? And I remember my mother saying, well, all the cool stuff comes from the coast. Everyone will be wearing those here in a couple of years. And nobody ever.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. I remember when I was a kid, I was like 6, probably. And I had a sweater that I've Googled it and tried to find it because it was one of the most amazing articles of clothing I've ever had. It was a pink, not pink, but like a mixture of pink and orange. I don't even know what that color would be, but it had a.
I think it's called Porange. It's called Porange. I think
Porange. Yeah. Porangehub.com. But I remember I had this like pink orange Porange sweater that had a hologram on it of a BMX bike going off a ramp. There was a kid on it, and the above it in this awful font it said "Create Chaos," but it was spelled KRE with a K.
Oh yes.
And like, if I could have that thing, which I didn't know it at the time, but that was kind of what my life would end up being, was just me flying off a metaphorical ramp and creating chaos wherever I went.
Yeah.
But man, that thing, so that's the kind of stuff I was doing in the 80s was, you know, wearing hologram t-shirts, riding bikes, trying to skate on a Nash skateboard, which pretty much was like equated to me going down my parents' driveway because it was at an angle. And
yeah,
then,
we did the same. And
then it got real scary when you got to the edge because that's where all the rocks from the road were. So you kind of
oh man, and it would just like it would break immediately. It's like your skateboard would just come to an immediate halt, and you would just go ass over tea kettle into the road.
A lot of people don't know it, but the gravel from a crowned road is the emergency brake of a Nash skateboard. A lot of people don't know that, but that's a fact. And,
yeah, that's a one-way ticket to some skinned knees and possibly some stitches in your chin.
And
for sure.
Definitely some tears in front of your friends. You're not gonna be the toughest kid on the cul-de-sac after that, are you, Chris?
No, but what would you pay to have that sweatshirt now? That sounds
I would pay $150.
totally amazing.
I would pay.
Oh my gosh!
I actually just bought some Reebok pumps, new. They're a reissue, and I paid $150 for those, and so. I haven't worn them. They're just in my closet.
So I saw some of those online. When you say new reissue, are they remaking them or is this old stock?
They're remaking them. They're the same design, but
oh my gosh,
they're akin to the same design. They actually just put out another design called Atlanta, which is a throw to Dominique Wilkins because those were the ones that Dominique Wilkins wore when he was on the Hawks.
Okay.
And throwing tomahawk jams down. But yeah, I'll buy Jordans. Like I'm that guy. Like if it's
Are you a sneakerhead?
I'm a sneakerhead for sure, but I don't have the money to be a sneakerhead. So like
right, okay.
The first pair of Jordans I bought was and by the way, I have a canvas of Michael Jordan shooting his last shot right above my computer where I'm sitting right now. Because I wanted to look at greatness while I was working on music. But and I'm not
well, then you should have a poster of Prince or something up there, shouldn't you?
I mean, I like Prince, but Michael Jordan is there's no one better. And I wish I'll send you a photo of this painting because it's his last shot that he took before he retired when he was 23. And they're playing the Utah Jazz. And what they did on this painting was they left Jordan in color and they made everything else black and white.
Okay.
And you can, he's shooting from like the top, a little bit to the left of the top of the key. It's a jump shot. And you can see the entire crowd and their faces. And the ball is in midair. And you can see the players' faces. So the players, everybody except Jordan and the audience, black and white. Jordan's in full color and the ball's in full color. And the expressions on these people's faces in the crowd, I love looking through it just to see their faces because every single person is like, son of a bitch. Because they're in
just Utah. Like, they're in just Utah. Frozen in like awe.
Well, no, not even awe or angst or just, God damn it, because they know it's going to go in, you know?
Yeah.
And he won the game with that shot. So it's just kind of a thing for me to like draw maybe some youthful inspiration from when I'm working on music. But
I'm sure you're also drawing inspiration from the fact that I'm guessing in this same poster, would this have been when, what's his name, was Stockton?
Yeah, John Stockton. I can see his quadricep.
Right.
It looks great. He's got his short shorts on.
That's exactly.
Karl Malone is looking at the ball going, oh, shit. And then he's just like, man, I got a whole mess of CDLs I got to give out tomorrow from a trucking company. And yeah, I mean, I'm making jokes that no one's going to get.
I'm getting those.
We got Steve Kerr.
Listen, I appreciate a John Stockton short shorts
and we got,
joke.
And the thing is, we got a little Jeff Hornacek, I believe, over here on the left. And he's got some short shorts on too, but they're not quite as short as John Stockton's.
Oh, Stockton had the custom short shorts. Like they were.
John Stockton is the white New Balance tennis shoe of basketball players. You know what I'm talking about? Like the dad tennis shoe. Like
Yes.
that's what he is. He looks like the living, breathing version of a white New Balance tennis shoe that's real excited to go out and mow the grass on a Saturday
Oh
morning.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
get it. I love mowing grass. But anyway, back to the shoes thing. I basically got a really good tax refund several years ago and was like, what am I going to do with this money? And I was like, I want to buy some Jordans. And I Googled, my favorite Jordans of all time are the fives. And I Googled them, and lo and behold, Foot Locker was dropping them the next day or getting them in the next day.
Okay.
So I called and reserved a pair, and I spent $180 on a pair of tennis shoes. And it was cool because I had always wanted those as a kid, and I never had them. I had other Jordans. It's not like I grew up dirt poor or something like that, but I just never had that particular. Like my neighbor Robbie Marsh had those, and I was always like, I want those shoes. And
I don't know the numbers. I had one of them. I think it was one of the first. Well, they were black, red, and white.
well, that narrows it down.
Well,
they're all black. They're all black.
are they all the same color? Okay.
Most of them have black, red, and white because of the Bulls. But I
Okay,
basically
okay.
fulfilled a childhood dream for $180 with my refund from Uncle Sam, and it was well worth it. And
Oh, that's totally well worth it.
yeah,
And
and I still
you
got
know,
'em. I still got them. And every once in a while, I'll flex on the block with them.
sure. Why wouldn't you go out stunting in those? I mean, I'm considering these pumps now that I know these things are because when I was a kid, I wanted the pumps, and I remember my dad being like, "That's just a fad, and that's just we're not getting you pump up
He's correct.
tennis shoes."
He's correct. But dude, when I got them, I haven't worn them or anything. The only thing I've done is went and then push the button to make it go
Right.
because it just takes me back to being a kid. And I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna wear them once the weather breaks, but I'm not putting them in the mud. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. But yeah, it's
I mean, those are stage shoes. I mean, it's like I've sort of gotten past the point where I don't really wear cowboy boots anymore. I wear my work boots on stage. But let me tell you what, if I had a pair of pumps,
yeah.
that's good stage attire right there.
I mean, honestly, dude, and like when you're walking up onto stage, you just stop, bend over with your guitar, and pump them up real quick. That's a hilarious gimmick. Like that's a funny gag, too. And then you could, at the end of the set, you could take it off, put it up to the microphone, and hit the release thing.
And go.
End of show. I'm Trapper Haskins, and I'm a baller. I don't know if that's really going to work for your demographic because you just played. I saw on your Instagram you just played at a place where Hank Williams played in the 40s.
Yeah. Super cool place down in.
Tell me about that, but we got to get back to some of your favorite Mark Twain quotes because I really want.
Oh, so my favorite Mark Twain quote, other than the Cincinnati one, would probably be, what is it? He says, "Suppose that you were a member of Congress. Now suppose that you were an idiot. But I repeat myself."
All right.
I like that one.
Yeah, that hasn't changed, man. That has not changed. I think we've talked before about politics and I don't really want to get into all that shit because at the end of the day it's pointless. All we can do is fucking vote. But like
right.
At this point in the game, I mean, I did a podcast with a kid couple, 6 months ago. We were talking about my album, and somehow he brought up the people that they're called furries, and they dress up like.
Oh, I've heard of this.
And they
Yeah.
have sex and they dress up like unicorns or something. I'm not sure what it is, but we were talking about that at one point, and then I did a callback to it when we were talking about politics, and I told him that I would rather be a furry with a unicorn horn up my ass than be a staunch Republican or a staunch Democrat in this day and age, because that would be less embarrassing. Like, I just feel like at this point, if you believe any of the rhetoric, you're an idiot. And that's why my podcast is going to be so unsuccessful, because I alienate both sides. And
Right.
And I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit, because at the end of the day, if you're so dumb that you can't see through the bullshit at this point, then you probably wouldn't understand half the stuff we talk about on the podcast, because you're a Neanderthal. I mean,
that's kind of why that Mark Twain quote. I mean, it's so simple. It's really direct. But one of the reasons I like it is because, I mean, he was saying this more than 100 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's still like unbelievable. I mean, it's just like it just feels like it's kind of proof or whatever that to the general public, like it's just always been that way. They've always
And
sort of
it's
looked at
never,
the people in the high castle with this like disdain. That like, oh my gosh, these fucking
it's,
people.
yeah, it's not cool, man. I don't like it. I actually saw, you're talking about, I went to the gas station before we did this to get some beer and some cigarettes because I wanted to have a few beers. I like to do the podcast with a few Budweisers in me. But
Sure.
basically, I was standing in line and there was this guy talking to the clerk in front of me. And I just caught the end of this conversation. And this kind of all happened within 5 seconds. And I wasn't paying attention to what music was playing at the time, but I heard this guy go, what did he say? He's like, oh yeah, man, I get paid tomorrow. I got to make it till then. And then the clerk was like, oh man, I got to make it till Wednesday. And then my focus shifted off of those two guys talking, and it went on the music that was playing over the loudspeaker.
Mm-hmm.
And it was MC Hammer's Pray, which I don't know if you've ever heard that, but it's like, you got to pray. Hey, you got to pray. Hey.
I'm actually covering that. I'm covering that song on my next album.
But this was what was so interesting. It then goes, it's like, you got to pray. Hey, you got to pray. Hey, you got to pray just to make it today. It's a very like the iambic pentameter of it or whatever, the rhythm of the lyrics is very 80s rap. But I thought it was interesting that both these guys were talking about trying to get by. And then MC Hammer was talking about you got to pray just to make it today. It was just kind of a weird moment that made me think about, and this is kind of into the politics thing, but like, you know, Christianity and capitalism are kind of not really like, you know, it's kind of an oxymoron to call America a capitalist nation and a Christian nation at the same time, because capitalism and Christianity are a little what's the word?
Yeah, they're a little right. There's an incongruency.
There's a juxtaposition
there for sure
between the philosophies of capitalism and Christianity. And that's kind of that in and of itself to me kind of shows you, back to the Twain quote, like what we're dealing with. You know, you've got people claiming to be Christian that don't want to do X, Y, and Z for the poor when the Bible clearly says take care of everybody.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You got to be careful about I mean, they can you know, they can say they've followed Christian teaching all they want, but they've you know, a lot of people in power say they've sort of weaponized religion, and it's sort of
dogma has been weaponized, period.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I wrote a song years ago, and I ended up putting it's just an iPhone recording, and I put it on this album I put out last year called Mono Sapien. But when I originally wrote the song, it was called Dear John Letter to God. And I'm a spiritual person. I mean, I'm agnostic mostly, but occasionally I'll thank, in air quotes, God for something or whatever. I rarely ask for anything. But I remember I was listening to the album when it was finally done. I got it back for mastering and all that. And that's the second to last song on the record. And everything had sounded really good so far. And it was the first masters I'd gotten back. And I was like, thank you, God. And I pointed at the sky. And I thought that was kind of funny that I just got done listening to a song called Dear John Letter to God, which is obviously about me completely blowing off whatever that is. And then I changed the title to Dear John Letter to Dogma because I realized that that's actually what I have a problem with is dogmatism. Like believing in anything so strongly that you can't hear another point of view, to me, is asinine. And I think that's Congress in a nutshell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I'm imagining you doing the baseball players or the athletes super sky point.
That's what I did.
After getting these
That's exactly
back.
what I did. That is exactly what I did. I like snapped my fingers and like did a double point and said, thank you, God. And I mean, that comes from probably habit of being raised in it. But either way, it dawned on me like, what am I going to do? Put out this title that's like, Dear John, Letter to God, when I'm sitting here thanking God, right? You know,
Right.
I felt like a fool. So I feel
It's funny. My son, he plays he plays little league baseball, and we watched a lot of baseball, and so he's seen enough of these MLB players. So now every time he steps up to the plate, he taps the plate with his bat, and with his other hand, he does like a little heart tap and a super sky point before he goes into
I love it.
his batting stance. Yeah, it's terrific.
Does he also speak with like a Haitian accent when he does interviews? He might want to. In this current climate, he might want to avoid doing that.
He might want to avoid doing that, but he wears a chain with a cross, and the cross is made of little silver baseball bats.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I once had a cross with or a gold chain with a cross save my life at a river. This is interesting. This is very interesting.
What?
Yeah. So when we were probably 15 or 16, we went to Current River in Missouri. I don't know if you're familiar with where that is.
I'm not.
Well, it's a big party spot for people from Southern Illinois, which Southern Illinois in and of itself is kind of a party spot, just in different ways. But we went over to Current River, and I don't know if we were in high school, and one of my friends was drunk, and there were these rednecks up on this bluff across the river from us, and he started yelling at them, and they started yelling back at him, and
wise,
real smart kid. And so all this is going on, and it gets kind of escalates to a point, and then finally these people disappear from the top of the bluff. So we go on about our business, and about 45 minutes later, guess who shows up? Those people. They walked down off the bluff, crossed the river, and came over to talk to us on our little sandbar. And let's just say I didn't know what meth was yet, but they were either making moonshine or making meth, one of the two.
Yeah, these were
terrifying whites.
Right. These were not suburban cowboys.
No. There was not any Old Navy. Yeah, it was very, 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 yeah, it was scary as shit. And so they come up and they're just putting us in our place, as a collective, pretty much because of this one guy's behavior. And I was sitting down, Native American style, to keep it correct, but I was just sitting with my legs crossed. And
we call that crisscross applesauce.
I was crisscross applesauce. That's what I was doing, because I was about to shit my pants with a lot of diarrhea too. So I was just sitting there terrified, crisscross applesauce, and this fucking Appalachian wood person comes over to me and gets right down in my face. And he goes,
okay.
And he looks at my cross, because I had my shirt off and I was wearing a golden cross. And he goes, "You Catholic?" And I went, and at that point I'm like, is me being Catholic going to be good, or is it going to be bad?
Right.
So it was like I was like getting interviewed by the IRA, and so I go, I'll just go with honesty. So I was like, yeah. And he literally went, "This one's all right." And then that diffused the entire situation, and they left us alone. And that was the first and last thing Catholicism ever did for me.
Well, I wonder what would have happened if you'd said, "Hell no, I'm a proddy.
I'm Baptist." I don't know. They probably would have put a car bomb in our, I don't know. But it was, that was,
my gosh,
that was definitely a terrifying situation. So watch out for the river people.
It's just interesting how just that symbolism sort of it gives you this identity that they didn't know anything about you. No. And they see that, and so they see something in that they're okay with. So, but so this is the thing, and I don't want to get into politics too deep, but I do feel like a lot of people in office, they're sort of donning that necklace, so to speak, just for the appearance and the acceptance. You know what I mean? It's
absolutely. I mean, I'll say something about politics. I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, I don't like Democrats nowadays because of virtue signaling. And they want to act like they're on the right side of every argument and all this shit. But at the end of the day, fucking the right-wing Republicans have been doing that shit for years, whether it be Jesus or abortion or whatever the fuck. So it's all virtue signaling. It's all, everybody dons the fucking gold cross that they think is going to get them out of the trouble that they might get into. I'm saying that metaphorically with the river story. But they're just, everybody's wearing a fucking mask at this point. I mean, everybody. Like, there are very few people that are genuine and real and aren't basically behaving like a used car salesman, and I feel like that's stems from social media. Now it's gotten into the populace because of social media, but politicians are the original social media. They're the original influencers, and I think that's the thing that sometimes people fail to recognize, because at the end of the day, everybody wants something to believe in,
Yeah. That's a good point.
Anyway, any Hoosers. So let's see what else here. I've got your album, Blood in the Honey, sitting next to me, which I had not listened to in a couple months. And prior to that, I hadn't listened to it in a real long time. I was at work one night and I listened to it, and it's really good, dude.
Thanks.
I got on Spotify to listen to it today before we spoke, just to touch base with my favorite song of yours, which is In the Boot Heel of Missouri. And still, I don't see many songs that are that lovely. What inspired, I think I've asked you about this before, but I don't remember, like, what inspired Boot Hill of Missouri? Because to me, you talk about you writing a book and everything, and that song really paints a picture of an environment. And that's what I love about it.
It's funny, Rye, our mutual friend Rye Evans.
Rye has been mentioned on like every podcast, and
Has he really?
Almost. And I'm supposed to get him to do it, but he's constantly too busy listening to old barbershop quartets from the 1940s that no one gives a shit about.
Sure. Yeah. I asked him a couple of weeks ago. I was like, "Who you been listening to lately?" And he's like, "Everyone I listen to is already dead."
Yeah, the guy's not doing good. We gotta get him out on the town or something. But yeah, when I used to, I guess for backstory, I met this guy named Ryan in Nashville when I lived there. I did my first record with him, Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Then I moved to Paducah, and then Ryan immediately, almost a little too soon, moved on to Trapper. And it hurt a little bit. But then when, this is back in the days of MySpace, he sent me your MySpace, and In the Boot Heel of Missouri was on it. And
there was a demo version. That's right.
Demo version. Yeah. Of it. And I heard that and was like, oh, this guy's badass. So I went from being like, who's this Trapper motherfucker, to this guy's badass and being very happy for him. And that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then I guess it would be, shit, man, 12 years later, you finally put the fucking song on a record. Yeah,
I know. And that, I mean, but so that kind of gets back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. Like, I had written this whole batch of songs, and then I took an office job, closed the guitar case, and didn't open it for years. And so, like, those songs just sort of, they were going to die on the vine. Like, I had done all these demos back in what was that, 2012 or something like that?
Oh, and I mean, I left.
Was it before that?
I left Nashville in 2008, and I know within that year, it had to be 2008, 2009.
Wow.
Maybe I'm confusing the original memory. Like, I may have heard other shit. I don't know about Boot Heel of Missouri.
I do remember you mentioning that song, though, that whenever that was. It was MySpace. So yeah, it was over 10 years ago.
Mentioning it.
Like, but
I love it. I think it's beautiful.
Nice, thanks. But so I had written it and done a demo version, and then, like, just for years didn't record, didn't play out or anything. And so that's why it took so long to get on an album, not because it kept missing the album. There was no album to put it on because I wasn't recording anything.
Yeah.
But Rye, he's the guy that he actually plays drums on that song, and he produced the record. But gosh, so that song was written.
Shout out Stagger Inn Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, just in case anybody is listening that would like to work with a guy that's into barbershop quartets.
Old gospel barber.
He's great at what he does, but
he's fantastic.
Don't let him make you a playlist.
But that song, so you talk about it being like it's a story song, and Rye, he plays drums on the song, and he said it took me several listens to actually listen to the story because there's no chorus in it. It just sort of tells this story. And I'm from Memphis originally, and we used to drive up to Chicago when I was a kid all the time. So we would drive I-55 through the Boot Heel, Missouri. And I don't know, I always just thought that was a cool name for a region. And so I just had this story in my head of kind of a drifter who comes through town and meets a guy who has scarred up hands and sort of wants to know the story of the scars on his hands. And it takes place in the Boot Heel, Missouri, just because, I don't know. It has a certain ring to it.
Oh yeah. I mean, Boot Heel, Missouri it literally rolls off the tongue.
Right. So I was driving around one day, and I don't know where you write songs, but I'll tend to come up with like a melody or something maybe on the guitar, but I end up writing a lot of lyrics just driving around town because your sort of subconscious takes over, and you're not so precious about it, and you just kind of you just kind of start spitting out stuff, and it came out and it went from there. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I love that shit. And to anybody listening, by the way, can you tell, because very few people, I've been a part of a lot of mailing lists. Like now that I bought the Reebok pumps, I'm on a mailing list with Foot Locker. And they send me, which I'm cool with because I get to see Jordans that I can't afford to buy right now. But most of the shit that I get in my email sucks. But every time I get your, what is it?
6 bullets.
6 bullets. Every time I get that, I look at it because it's
cool.
Very interesting. And I think that for anybody that's listening to this and has made it to this point, and look, Trapper, the amount of success, the boost you're going to get from this podcast is going to be undeniable.
Sure.
I'm telling you right now, almost a dozen people will listen to this. So yeah, this is going to be you're going to be turning up. You're going to be doing some numbers, but
I think you're underselling this thing here. I mean, especially once you start talking about orange colored sweatshirts, and this is just.
Yeah, I mean, we could actually maybe we'll call the whole episode "Word Porange" with Trapper Haskins.
Please do.
I kind of just wanted to call it a Mountain Man's Whitney Houston, but we'll see. Every time I say what I'm going to call the podcast on the podcast, I end up putting it out under a different title. So
right. But Word Porange has my vote. But anyhow,
well, then maybe we'll go with that. So tell people about where they can find all your stuff and get a little bit. And I'm not trying to wrap up the interview. I just thought about this. And maybe you do have to wrap it up. I'm not even sure. But basically, just tell people where they can find you. And honestly, I can recommend highly that you sign up for Trapper's mailing list, because when he sends out the 6 bullets thing, there's always something in there I didn't know about that's very interesting.
Cool.
And it's not a waste of your time, as most emails you get are. You might learn something, or just little brain candy.
That's a good way of putting it, brain candy. So I have a monthly newsletter that's not 6 bullets. I have 2 newsletters I send out. One of them is what's going on with my music, what's going on with my writing, and what's going on in my wood shop. And then I send out another one called 6 bullets, which has nothing to do with anything I'm working on. It's just, it's six bullet points. The last one is always a 5-song mixtape, just stuff that I've been listening to on Spotify or whatever. But then there's also 5 something that I have tripped across on the internet that I find interesting, that kind of blows my mind, that's really artistic, it could be anything. Some of it's funny, some of it's really poignant. And sometimes it's a documentary, sometimes it's books that I've read, or some list of crazy shit that you can't believe, or some nutty project somebody's taken on. But it's not any kind of promotional thing of anything that I do. It's just stuff that, like you said, is brain candy. and I think other people would find it interesting. So, whatever I've been into that month, I put it on this 6 bullets list and send that out as well. So, I don't spam people. They get about 2 emails a month, one of them being the sound script and sawdust, which is my own pursuits, and then 6 bullets, which is just, like I said, just whatever creative shit.
They're actually both good. And I look at both of them. I just confuse them with the one thing because I'm an idiot, but they're both good. And people can sign up for that at your website, correct?
Yeah, man. If you just go to the website, I think if you stay on a page for 10 seconds, there's a pop-up that comes up, and you just throw your email on there, and I'll add you to the list.
I mean, and it really is genuinely like, I don't know, like we're almost at an hour now. I can maybe go a little bit longer if you want to. I know you have something you got to do, so I don't know what your schedule looks like. Where are you at with it, Trap?
I don't have a clock in front of me. We're supposed to go to I'm good.
It's 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more. I generally don't like to go over like an hour and a half. That seems, that seems a little much.
There's some podcasts that I had subscribed to like years ago, not when they first came out, but when I first started listening to them. And then after a while, I was like, man, this is a really interesting guest, but you've been talking to them for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like maybe consider distilling your podcast down a little bit. So, you get that long, and it's like,
well, it depends. It depends on what it is. Like I'll listen to a lot of, like, for example, like Rogan. Like I listen to Rogan all the time because I'm a huge fan of the N-word. That was a joke. But like I listen to that, and when he has a specialist on, like a doctor or somebody that's a specialist in anything. I'm not like leaning towards COVID or something like that. I don't want to have that conversation. See if we can get this taken off YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Please don't.
I'll call the whole episode COVID said the N-word and see how long
it stays. That'll be on there about 7 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, like, if he, for example, he had a comedian on, Joey Diaz, this week, and when I'm at work, I'll listen to podcasts nonstop. And when he was talking to Joey Diaz, it's just 2 guys basically like doing what we're doing, which is kind of just catching up, talking about stuff they have in common, yada, yada, yada. And it's not that entertaining to me, really. It gets kind of boring, especially after, the hour and a half or whatever. But when he has someone on that is really knowledgeable about a particular topic, and he's asking more questions than he's doing talking, I can do a 3-hour one. I really can, if I'm listening to something interesting. But when he has like a comedian on and it's just kind of like 2 guys shooting the shit, which is like what we're doing. I mean, if you and I talked for 3 hours, it's bound to get redundant. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
So
I just feel like when I've listened to those podcasts, when they go on, even if he's got an expert on some of these ones I listen to that listened to in the past that I won't name, they'd go on for 2.5, 3 hours. And at some point I was just like, man, I'll just read the guy's fucking book. I mean,
I've never thought that. Ever. I have never thought that. I'm always like, this is great. I'm just getting information, getting cliff notes. I don't have to do any work, like I really like, I got in a bad habit that I'm still in when COVID hit, I lost my job. Why do I always get a phone call from this asshole when I'm doing the podcast? It's my best friend, and every time I'm doing one of these, I get a phone call.
Have you had him on yet?
I've had him on.
I was going to say, maybe that's why he's calling.
And I've beeped him in on the podcast. Not doing that today. I need to learn to hit do not disturb. I meant to do that before I started recording. But I got in a really bad habit when I got laid off when COVID hit, and I didn't have anything to do. So I would get up in the morning, make coffee, smoke cigarettes, and just watch podcasts on YouTube like it was the morning news. And so I got into that habit, and I was laid off for 1.5 years because basically I had a really good job. I was making really good money. When I got laid off, I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to pay my bills, basically. And so I kind of used the unemployment thing to just get my debt diminished and be able to, basically, when I would go back to work, I would know that I'd be able to cover my bills because I had taken care of enough debt. So I finally did go back to work, and I'm working nights. And so I haven't been able to break the get up in the morning, drink coffee, watch podcasts thing, because when I get up in the morning, I don't have to go to work till later, and I'm still doing it. and it has increased the amount of cigarettes and coffee that I drink.
Oh,
Like it's bad. Like I need to cool it on the cigs and the coffee, but I haven't been able to break the cycle yet because
do you watch, like, you literally watch the podcast?
I'm a loser. Yeah, I just watch them. I just watch two people talk and try to cure my loneliness.
I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know they had. I listen to podcasts on whatever the app is, but I didn't realize people. I didn't realize there was an option to watch them.
Most of my favorite podcasts, like I like Rogan, and that's who I was watching when he was on YouTube before he went to Spotify. And then
what else are you listening to?
There's a comedian named, I love Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon is, to me, he's been on Rogan before, but his podcast to me is like, it comes out. I know when it comes out. It comes out. He was doing Saturdays and he moved it, but now I think he's going back to Saturday nights. So every Sunday morning I get up, I watch that. There's a comedian named Chris DiStefano who I really like. He does a podcast with a guy named Sal Vulcano from, what is that prank show? I can't think of what it's called because I never watched it and didn't know what it was. But they do one called Hey Babe that I like a lot.
Okay.
Chris DiStefano did a podcast with a guy named Giannis Papas. They do one called History Hyenas where they pick a topic and talk about it. They get off track and they don't really. It's funnier than it is history, but it's interesting.
Are they historians? Are they comedians?
They're comedians with an interest in history, I guess, or they thought it was a good idea for a podcast. But that's shit's pretty funny. That Giannis Papas guy, I like. He's got one he's been doing where he kind of recaps the news of the week, and it's called Yanni Long Days, which I like. And I mean, really, to be honest with you, this is what's funny to me. Is that I started watching podcasts because I used to love getting up and watching the news, and I don't like that anymore because I don't like the news.
Right.
And because I felt like, depending upon which side of the battle you want to pick, you're in a bubble. And then I think it's funny that now that I'm like trying to find people that are in the middle, I'm in a bubble of the middle. Like you can't escape the bubble. You know what I mean? Like there's no, like
you just choose your bubble.
You got to choose your bubble. Exactly, I guess. And I feel more comfortable in the middle bubble, but it took me a while to realize that although I feel like I'm kind of staying out of the left bubble or the right bubble, by choosing the middle bubble, I'm getting confirmation bias that, I'm complaining about the right and the left because they go to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC because they want confirmation bias. But by me being in the middle and choosing to watch things that are in the middle, I'm getting confirmation bias. So it's like you can't escape.
Right. Yeah. That's
I find interesting.
Human nature. It's interesting. I've been listening to. I really like Song Exploder. Do you listen to that one?
I think I have. It's
great.
Is that fucking guy that is like a producer, a white guy?
I don't know.
I guess you're listening to it. What's his name?
I think his name's Ricky Cage.
That's not it.
Rishi.
That's
okay.
Not the one I'm thinking.
So this is like a 15-minute podcast, maybe 20 minutes, and he'll take one artist, one song, and they break the song down where you might get an isolated bass track and he'll be like, so tell me what's going on. I really like that show because it really deconstructs the song from the, back to the time when it was written. And it's not just give me the story behind the song. It's give me the, what happened with the bass track here. Why do the drums, why is there a train whistle in here? It's like whatever. He kind of, just takes the whole song apart.
Does he do songs from all sorts of genres or does he pretty much stick with?
Oh, totally. No. It's all over. He'll do,
I have listened to that, but it's been a really, really long time, man.
Yeah, there's some rap, pop, country. I've heard all kinds of stuff on there. And it's super interesting. The very first episode I ever heard was they deconstructed the it wasn't a song. It was the peacock on NBC, the three notes or whatever, like why they chose those three notes and what instrument it was that recorded it or something. It's been years since I heard
why they chose those three notes?
I don't, man. That was like 2017 when I first heard it, but I was like,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And then when you said, what was the one, History Hyenas, where it's like two comedians that talk about a historical event.
Yeah.
There's this podcast called The Dollop, and
The Dollop,
DOLLOP.
Yeah.
And I cannot for the life of me remember who the two hosts are, but it's a similar thing where they will pick a historic event. One of them has researched it, so he knows the ins and outs of it. The other doesn't know anything about it. And then the one will tell the other one the story of this event, and they just riff on the thing.
Yeah.
And my favorite episode ever is called Tencent Beer Night, and this would have been in Cleveland in the 1970s, I think. Maybe it was the 80s, when they had Tencent Beer Night.
Can I tell you something?
If
they had 10-cent beer night in Cleveland in the 80s or 90s, they were probably doing it in California and New York in the 60s or 70s. Call back.
That's a callback.
Boom.
But it's unbelievable. People were there were people streaking on the field by the second inning. There were fights breaking out in the outfield by the fourth inning. It was just absolute.
What did you
madness.
guys think was going to happen?
Exactly.
Dude, it's funny how everything keeps coming full circle. But when I was growing up, this is kind of funny, actually. When I was growing up, I went to a Catholic grade school, Catholic church, all that, very indoctrinated into that until basically I went to college, and then I slowly started to get away from it. But the church that I went to, every year they had in air quotes, fundraiser called Summerfest, which was basically like the carnies came to, it was like a county fair, but there's a beer garden, right? And I was always like, as a kid, just kind of like, what? Like, what? So it's okay to make money for God off the devil. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's presupposing that an alcoholic beverage is straight from the devil when Jesus himself turned water into wine.
Well,
and
buddy, if you would have seen
so.
some of the shirtless fights that would break out at Summerfest every year, you might be a little bit more inclined to think that it was from Hades as opposed to heaven. But it was just like, it was kind of an interesting thing. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you this story, and I think this one needs to be known because you'll appreciate this, and then we can wrap it up, man. But so... do you remember my band? That's full circle again. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dakota. We recorded one of your songs on.
We did.
On one of
our.
Yeah,
2 years. 2 years time is on.
Which is also on fucking whatever this thing's called over here, Blood and the Honey.
You Must Be Quick. Is that the name of the record?
That was the EP. Yeah, which I probably owe you 6 to 7 cents for the plays that's gotten on the internet.
I'll bill you.
Bill me for that. But so back when that band got started, this is how Oh Yeah Dakota ended up getting named, okay? Because we were under a different moniker at first. The way the whole band got started was me and my homies from Salem started playing music together. And Chris Decker was playing drums, Darren Engel would play bass, or he would sing and play guitar, and then I would play bass for him. And so we would take turns playing our songs, blah, 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 blah. Just kind of a fun thing. And so we played one show under the moniker The Angry Unicorns. Not because it meant anything, but because we just thought it was funny and we couldn't figure out what to call ourselves. And Darren suggested we call it The Angry Unicorns. It made us laugh.
Just because it's absurd.
Yeah, it was absurd. It was a show that didn't matter, blah, blah, blah. So then after the Angry Unicorns played that first show, and word went around in the 618 that the Angry Unicorns were a rockin' band, we got an opportunity to play at Summerfest. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Full circle.
Full circle. Everything's full circle. So we get an opportunity to play at Summerfest, and I remember my mom or dad calling me and being like, "Oh yeah, they've got your name on the marquee out in front of the church. Angry Unicorns Saturday night, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, we made it." And so it's on the main drag in Salem, which is it's out of state tags kind of thing,
Okay. Yep.
And so basically, we get there and we're loading in to play the big night at Summerfest in front of the beer garden. And the priest at the time comes over to me and he says, "I need to talk to you for a minute." And I was like, "Okay." And I'm assuming he's going to tell us something about what we're supposed to do as far as playing. And he says, I Googled your band to see what you guys sounded like. And I was like, "Oh yeah, we don't," I cut him off. I was like, "Yeah, we don't have anything on the internet yet. Like, we're just a band." He goes, "Yeah. But keep in mind this is a priest." He goes, "Well, when I Googled your band, I found something on Urban Dictionary for Angry Unicorn. And
Oh, really?
I wasn't very happy about the fact that we've had your name on the marquee for a week."
I don't know I don't know the lingo, so I don't know what it
Well,
means.
He didn't tell me. He just told me to look it up. And I looked it up, and an angry unicorn is to wear a dildo on one's head and fuck someone angrily with it. Yeah. So I got to hear that from Google, and then I had to go find him, and I was like, "Look, Father, I'm sorry. We did not know that. It was just a joke that made us laugh. I had no idea." And later, not that night after the show, we went back to Chris Decker's house and we were talking about that we probably needed to change the band name. And we ended up, at the time, I would always say, "Oh yeah, Dakota." And so we ended up changing the band name to "Oh yeah, Dakota" because it was basically the Angry Unicorns without some sort of perverted UrbanDictionary.com.
So that is the most terrific, I wouldn't say origin story for a band name because it wasn't the origin of the name, but that is the most unfortunate and hilarious, unintended.
And let's be honest, that priest had probably Angry Unicorn 5 boys by that time. Like, fuck him. I mean, who gives a shit? Like, it was so stupid for him to think that we were like that's like the definition of paranoia, is that we had done that on purpose to get it on the marquee of the church. Like, what, dude? Because he was
right.
He was being a real dick. Like, he was not happy, and it's like, you know what, you fucking pedophile, go fuck yourself. Like,
so to your name, "Oh yeah, Dakota," you said you would always say, "Oh yeah, Dakota." Why would you say? Is there something behind that?
Yeah, and it's pointless. My friend Joseph and I used to call each other. It's when I lived in Nashville, and we would just make up stories, like characters or whatever. And he made one up where I don't remember. I think it was a mutual thing. But we got to the point where we had created this story where this kid named Dakota, his parents had died, and he had gone to live with his uncle. Don't remember the uncle's name, in like a cabin in the woods. And his uncle was just a real grizzled man, and Dakota was not a grizzled boy.
Okay.
And so the uncle would always be like, "Oh yeah, Dakota, get out there and fetch me some wood for the fire." And so we just would, and then it kind of transformed into this thing where if something was cool, we would be like, "Oh yeah, Dakota." And it just snowballs.
So it's just an "Oh yeah, Dakota." The band name is just an inside joke.
Totally, yeah. And people used to always ask like what it meant, and I'd be like, "Nothing." I mean, absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And really, that's the honest answer. It doesn't really mean anything.
It means nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. And the funny thing about that band title too is that it should have had a comma in it after "Oh yeah" and before
yeah. "Oh yeah, comma Dakota."
Nope. Just an exclamation point right at the end. And my girlfriend at the time would always be like, "It needs a fucking comma." And I was like, "I'm not putting it in there." I was like, "It just looks stupid." I was like, it just needs to be "Oh yeah, Dakota!" exclamation point.
I mean, as a former English major, it needs the comma, but from a graphic standpoint, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. And
it doesn't make sense to have a comma in a band's name.
Yeah, and we're going to be putting, and it doesn't make sense to call a band Oh Yeah Dakota, but I'm not fucking, if the band name doesn't mean anything, I'm not worried about the grammatical correctness of the fucking, it's just like, that's why it didn't work out with her.
But the exclamation point is necessary for sure.
Oh yeah, it was a very exciting time.
Yeah.
Well, Trapper, I love you, man. We'll
love
wrap
you too.
it up. This was really fun. There's a bunch of shit on my list that I still want to talk to you about. So maybe one day I can have you back on and we'll cover old time baseball. The
old time baseball.
Harpeth River Google Cam.
Oh yeah.
I have here Rye Left Me for You, which we did cover.
I didn't realize I was a rebound. I didn't know that it was that soon after you moved.
You by all means were an upgrade, sir. Like Rye finally got his shit together and started making music with somebody that knew what they were doing. Well, man, I love you and thank you for doing this. And
happy to do it. If anybody wants to check my stuff out, it's just trapperhaskins.com,
I'll put that in the description of the video. Cool. I'll put your link in there. And then also, are you okay with me? Like normally I ask people what they want me to put, and we didn't even talk about diabetes. God damn it. But that's for another, I'll get a bunch of diabetics on and we'll do a big diabetes episode.
Oh yeah. Diabetic roundtable. Yeah.
But basically, when I think about you, full circle again, you're a husband, father, songwriter, woodworker, author, a runner of marathons. We can leave diabetic out. And most importantly, a mountain man's Whitney Houston.
That is the most important, moniker, I guess.
Okay. And what do you want me to call the episode? Porange?
What we call it was a word porange.
Word porange. Okay, cool. I'll call it word porange.
Sounds good. Hey, behave yourself tonight.
I will. My dad is actually in town. He's at a gun show right now because he voted for Trump, and we're gonna work on my house a little bit because I'm putting it up for sale. So I'm gonna get right out of here and move back to my hometown and probably. Yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows?
Yeah, I'm trying to sell the place and move back to my own. My dad's got cancer, so I'm trying to get closer to him.
Spend some time.
Spend some time with him. So I'm going to be moving back to Salem, Illinois, and we're going to get the Angry Unicorns started back up, and we're going to be playing
the Angry Unicorns
2022.
back together at Summerfest. I love it.
Summerfest
2022. Well, tell your pops that I said hello, and I can't wait to hear the next Angry Unicorns record.
It's going to be called. What would I call it? Priest Secrets. All right, man.
Awful, man.
Be good. I love you. Fuck them.
Love you too.
All right, later.
See you, brother.